Hi everyone, I'm Sasha from Women's Fight News, and today I'm joined by Susannah Schofield, OBE, which is very impressive, by the way.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I still every now and again have to pinch myself for it, if I'm honest. It wasn't something that was ever expected. And when we got the news about it, it arrived in a very, very formal letter. And, I picked it up and it's kind of, it's very white. It's from the Cabinet Office. And my husband just looked at me and was like, "What have you done?" So I don't know. So the fear of that, I hadn't been paying VAT or something. So it was a great surprise, but a brilliant, brilliant day. And I think the nicest thing about going to collect something like that is I got to take my two girls with me. So it's fantastic. They got to come along. You have to wear a hat when you go to Buckingham Palace to collect it. And my youngest was 5 at the time and determined that a tiara was a hat. So she went as a princess to the palace, just had the best day. As we were walking down, there was a guy standing on the side of the road, and he said, "Oh, I know where you're going. It's Order of the British Empire Day today. You're all off to Buckingham Palace." He said, "Oh, what's Daddy done to deserve the award?" And my 8-year-old put her hands on her hips and went, "I'll have you know, Daddy's done nothing. Mummy's the smart one." And my husband said, "Oh no." So I just thought it was that amazing moment of, absolutely, they're the girls I'm bringing them up to be. But
Yeah.
a good honour, and I think got it for helping women in business, so and young people. So it's something I'm passionate about doing. But I feel very, very lucky to have been honoured for it.
Yeah, an incredible achievement, and congratulations to your daughter for coming up with that line as well. I love that.
I almost wish we'd filmed it. I'd like to replay it on that motivation moment. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So you've recently come to the attention of boxing fans with your new project, which is very unique, but I think it's something that boxing really, really needs, and I'm so interested to find out more about it. So do you want to explain?
Yeah, of course. So, Sasha, to be honest with you, I'd love to say it was always set out, but actually it wasn't. So I did nearly 20 years at Royal Mail and looked after the commercial team there. Last 5 years there, set up wholly owned subsidiaries for them. So big organisations from kind of the ground up to making them profitable, moved on to the next project. Then eventually started thinking, I'm going to do this for myself, and accidentally stumbled into sport. So my specialism is neuroscience, the bit that makes the brain work and all of that sort of thing. So I wanted to use that somehow in sport. So we started off with football academies, and how actually that so many of the young kids in football academies don't ever sadly make it to play in the Premier League, and then have to reshape themselves. And I think that rhetoric around being you're a player, not a person, and when it's taken away from you, all sports people feel that, I think, whether it's football or boxing, you are a boxer, and then all of a sudden you're not, or you retire. What are you? Your kind of identity has been stripped from you. So started working with academy players, and then actually realised that there was a need for the fans to have a voice. And we're going back 7 years ago now. So then we developed a fan engagement app, set off in football, moved to motorsport, and then 2 years ago set it up in boxing. So it was that really interesting moment of actually saying, we did a team sport, then we did a sport where things move around a track, and then we had to do a one-on-one sport for the technology development, which was the correct strategic play. And everyone said to me, "It's got to be golf, it's got to be," and I was like, the only thing it's going to be is boxing, because I love boxing. I'm old enough to have grown up with the first Tyson, the Mike Tyson. I remember Evander Holyfield, and staying up to watch the Bruno fight at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning at Vegas, and the excitement of it being just getting bigger and bigger. So when it was a one-on-one spot, I was like, it's boxing, it's not up for debate, that's what we're going to do. And I think where the boxing app has been well received over the last year is actually it's a place where people can download for free, but they can go and get a compendium of every licensed boxer. So it doesn't matter whether you've got your WBO or your IBO, who you hold, what weight you are, what nationality you are. It's one place that you can really quickly search by weight, by division, by fight night, etc. But then you can have some fun and predict along with the night. So just the Billy Joe Saunders Canelo fight this weekend, could go on, pick who you think's going to win, which round, by which method. Then you get points, and those points make prizes and etc. And there's loads of interaction within the app and stories, exclusive content. So building that over the last couple of years, and with my passion for boxing, just suddenly I'm speaking to so many amazing female boxers, and just really felt that the lack of representation out there was really poor. Not through, I think, anybody's fault, but actually just because it's grown so quickly. And it blows my mind that when I think it wasn't even in the 2008 Olympics, it wasn't there to be then, that you think the first Olympics was 2012. You just think, gosh, it's playing catch up, really, isn't it? And Jane Couch, obviously, who got her first licence, didn't get it until a tribunal in March 1998. You think, we talk now about how women have equal rights, all the rest of it, but actually this sport, women's the side of this, is still playing a little bit catch up. So because I love boxing, 7 years in sport, lots of years in the commercial of running organisations, I just thought, if I could use my commercial business acumen to help provide a safe place, really, a safeguarding platform for women to come together and to embrace that next generation coming up, then what better thing to do? So spoke to a couple of guys, an amazing guy called Rich Poxon, who's been a matchmaker in boxing forever and a day, used to be the head of ITV boxing, so really knows his stuff, and he was like, this is a good idea, you should do this. So with his help and John Wishusen, who obviously has worked Matchroom and is phenomenal as well, they kind of formed a mini team and helped me get into the sphere of it all, and they've just been fantastic. And I think we looked at it and said, you know what, let's do it, let's make unified promotions, and let's unify those women warriors and kind of give them a platform to get up on.
Yeah, and you're so right. When we're talking about, in 2012 was the first time that we saw female boxing in the Olympics. I mean, it doesn't really make sense when you say it out loud, does it? It shouldn't have taken that long to get to where we are.
Completely. And it's funny for me, because even when we had it, the British Board of Boxing Control originally refused Couch for a professional licence, and then when they finally gave the licence, even after a tribunal, all the women had to wear skirts. It's so crazy. Like, it just feels like something you'd be reading back in the 60s, isn't it, or 70s? Yeah. It's hard to believe that in my kids' years there's not been allowed, and it's not going. Because I look at it now and I think, strangely, some sports I think are played very differently. So I think female football is a very different game to male football. It's equally as beautiful, but actually it's a little bit slower. It's more about passing and less volatile, less physical, should we say. But I look at women's boxing, and having watched Katie Taylor and Tash last week, week before last, Tash Jonas, they're phenomenal. They are going punch for punch like any man would. And I appreciate the weight is different in there and the rounds are different. But actually, to watch this, it is an amazing sport. And I think, for me, I want to just be able to provide that voice that actually allows these women to create their own ecosystem, really, to be able to get decent sponsorship, good corporate deals, proper training and coaching. We take Natasha Jonas, a mum, she's got a 3-year-old, she's there's just so much that goes on in her world that I think if we can wrap around the opportunity to give her a better platform, she's obviously done it incredibly well, but those girls setting off on their journey like Tasha had to, how can we provide a platform that makes it that little bit easier for them to do? And also that safeguarding, boxing is still 99% male, and we've got a fair way to come. And having grown up at Royal Mail, where it was the majority of men, it never fazed me, it never stopped me in my career. I got to sit on the board, and I never felt like I was a woman in a man's world, but I always felt quite safe. And I think for me, I want to make sure that this, we read some terrible things in sports, the women's cycling, the women's gymnasts at the moment, some of the stuff that's coming out, and it happens across the board, doesn't it? I mean, male football has been no better at, with some of the lights that's been shone on there. But I think if we can provide a platform where that next generation coming up actually think, you know what, I can do this, I can aspire to want to be a female boxer. But with that, making sure the right insurance is in place and the right healthcare and all the bits, it's the silly things, isn't it, as to the height of the belt. It protects the male crown jewels, but it doesn't protect his ovaries properly. So let's change that for women, because this is now a very good, very respected sport. And I bow my hat to Invicta, in America with Shannon Knapp, and what they have done out there. She took that 9 years ago and said, no, do you know what? We're going to make a women's thing. We're going to have, Phoenix tournaments, and we're going to absolutely embrace this. And I've been speaking to her team just to see how we can emulate that almost, but to give that proper platform and take forward their learnings. So I think they're a decade ahead of us here, but I'm going to do my very best to play catch up now, my very best.
Yes, definitely. And what I quite like, because you've got quite a few with this unified promotions, you're doing quite a few things, aren't you, where you're talking about like the management side of it, the sponsorship side, the coaching. So is this all going to be under like one umbrella for your stable?
Yeah, completely. I mean, obviously, from regulatory point of view, we have to manage it very separately. I can't manage and do the promotion at the same time. So I have my promoter's boxing license now, so I'll be doing that side of things. But then I've got Rich in, who's going to do all of the kind of the matchmaking. Then we've got other people in to manage, etc. But we'll work with, so a couple of the girls for Sunday, which I'd love to be able to tell you, but we haven't quite got the signatures on the paper yet. So, but when we do, we'll start to announce, and obviously I'll let you know so you can break it out. So we're very excited. But as we start to sign, we're working with, so some girls are already coming with managers and trainers, which is great. We're just going to be promotion side. Some girls are starting off their journey. Sadly, because so many women boxers were looking to go to the Olympics, but actually because that's been pared down this year, they now don't get to go. But because of their age, they just can't wait another 4 years without turning pro. And the money just isn't there. So they either give up and kind of say, I can't afford to, I've got to get a job, or we try and get them up. And the talent out there coming up is phenomenal. So we're scooping those up and saying, listen, actually, if you need it, we can provide it all, because if you haven't been professional, or we can recommend people that are good. So we're working with lots of people. And I'm a huge believer, Sasha. I always have I never want to say this is my slice of the pie. I just want to say, how do we work together to make the pie bigger so everyone's slice is bigger? And I'm huge in collaboration, and I always have been throughout my whole career. So I think this is no different. I think we'll work with some amazing people. And actually, I think boxing managers are so personal because you have to trust them. They've got your life in their hands, essentially, haven't they? That actually, the person I introduced one of our signings to says, just not getting on, let's go find another one then. So we'll be very much a stable, pulling together the best and the best around to put that forward. But I think collectively we'll be able to get better corporate sponsorship simply because we'll have a collective voice. And one of the lovely things is we've already signed a deal with an amazing company called Blue Chip, who are going to produce a clothing range for Unified Promotions. So it'll be a bespoke female clothing range for female boxers that we can empower. But all of the profit from there will go into Unified to help provide coaches and training, taking the girls out. I'm lucky enough to own the Algarve Boxing Academy in Portugal.
Yeah.
It's been put together as part of this package. So actually we can go and do some warm weather training. We can get out there and focus on that with them. But the profits from Blue Chip and that will go back into that, so we can take people that are on their way up and not necessarily have the funding to be out in fight camps, to get them out there and get them training. And also working with Ringside with David Hill, who's been phenomenal in saying, do you know what, that women need a proper women's range. And I know there's a few out there, but actually mainstream women's gloves are children's gloves in pink, and that's all in a pretty colour. They're not actually ergonomically designed to look after what a woman needs. And women's knuckles are slightly differently shaped than men's. They hit slightly differently. Their hands are different sizes. So working with him on a brand Honey Punch, which I love, I just think it's such a great name, as to how actually we can work with our girls and start saying, right, what's needed, what should this look like, and then really try and work with the British Board of Boxing Control to say, listen, let's ensure that everything is up to scratch, because this sport's only going to grow. Let's absolutely work together, and let me say, let us advise each other as to what works to change it, to have almost a segment or a process for female boxers coming through. And I think together we can add real value to the sport. So yeah, we're going to do everything. We're going to be a one-stop shop for those that need it, or piecemeal for those that don't. But yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, see, that just sounds amazing. And I think that's something in general boxing is needed, to give people these, especially I always think when boxers are about to make their pro debut and they're new into the sport, even if they've come from amateurs to pros is so different. Yeah. And I think it must be so overwhelming, because it's not like a lot of sports, especially team sports, where you go in and you're there and you're kind of looked after to a certain degree. I think in boxing it can be very lonely, where you've got to find a coach, you've got to find stable mates in a way, you've got to find a promoter, a manager, and then sponsors, and there's so much pressure and to find the right people, because without the right people your journey is going to be very, very different, isn't it?
Completely. And actually it has to be a very selfish sport. You have to be very dedicated. There is no I don't really feel like it today, because it just comes back to bite you. You have to live and breathe it, and I think sometimes it's underestimated. So one of the things that we're doing at Unified is we've actually set up, we've got the website, but part of that is a safe haven behind, so that we're going to put loads of content on. We're going to film the girls' journeys from when they sign with us to their training, to their daily routine, to what they do, so that other young women coming up can look and see how hard it is it for me, but also really to make these girls stars in their own right. You know, and Instagram, what have you, is fantastic, but actually let's show the real dedication that goes on behind this. Let's show that journey, the nutrition, the trainer, the manager. What one of the girls we're hoping to sign at the moment is phenomenal. Her husband's actually her trainer, brother's her manager. You know, she's had an incredible amateur career and you know, in Olympics, etc. beforehand, but just the need now to turn professional suddenly needs so much more. But actually to film that journey and to film her, you know, her struggle, essentially, like, it's hard work. It's really hard. You know, she's got a baby. She's still training every day. She works full time. It's, you know, it's amazing to see this. And I really want to give the women an identity as well, that they're not just the boxer, what goes on behind the scenes as well, because I think it's very different in female boxing, women's boxing, that actually most people have to have a job as well. Yeah, I know a lot of male boxers do too, but unless you get to that real top, even if you're professional, sometimes it's still a hobby. You're still working full time, and that's, you know, to find the time to do that is a proper dedication, because you know, you play sport but you don't play boxing.
Yeah, 100%. And you do, I know it, like you said, we do see it in the men's where they do still work, but we see it with the women at a higher level. You know, we've had like Heather Hardy, who was a world champ, is still working. Delphine Pursoon was still working full time on a, you know, and arguably could have become undisputed champion. And there's a lot of them that still have to work because they're still not paid right. The money still isn't there. So, yeah, like you say, to see that journey, and I think people will get even more respect for female boxers, not only for the work that they do in the ring, but for what they're having to do outside the ring.
Absolutely, and we're lucky enough at Unified Promotions to have already signed a TV deal. So I feel very privileged to have done that. So Sporty Stuff on Sky 437 is an amazing channel. It's incredible. They stream loads of sport, but actually they've given us an 8-fight night deal, which is fantastic, kicking off end of September. So the first fight card will be 100% women, which is great. We're going to do it a little bit differently. It's I can't give too much away now, but it's going to be a very, very different fight night from your usual, just because I think it's time that we really almost want to do the launch of Unified Promotions and everything that goes with it, and really shout about, you know, women's boxing and have this amazing card. You know, and you have to die by the fights, don't you? That's you know, we make sure those fights are rightly matched and that they're good and that they're, you know, that they're enjoyed by fans. And then I think we're off to a good start. We're going to do loads of tournaments as well. We're going to take that kind of you know, the feeling from Invicta, where they do the Phoenix tournaments where you come down and pair down, because I think one of the things at the moment is, although we have some amazing, you know, as you know, Hannah Rankin, Katie Taylor, Rachel Ball, Terry Harper, you know, there's some incredible female boxers, but the breadth as you go down starts, you know, we don't necessarily have that depth within female boxers. So I think giving amateurs a chance to step up into and have some fights by doing it in a kind of tournament style, I think will really help move. But where I think we've been lucky with Sporty Stuff is they see the opportunity with this as well. So they're actually saying, you know, let's take this on as a development opportunity. Let's work with you. Let's give this sport a platform to really shout about, to really look at what we can do and embrace it and support it. And with that, then I think comes the ability to start challenging fair pay, because, you know, an awful lot of women get into the ring for what rightly they're not, you know, they should be entitled to more. And I don't want to champion, because it is eyes on the screen. You know, Canelo will always get paid more than somebody else, because, you know, he is what he is. The likes of AJ, Joshua, White, Wilder, Fury, you know, they're always going to command big dollar, and I understand that, because you pay for dragging people into pay-per-view or etc. But I think as we move up, we just need that voice that actually says, you know, that fight between Katie Taylor and Natasha Jonas was incredible. But in my opinion, it was by far the best of the evening. And although Chisora was incredible, but actually it was by far the best of the evening. And I think that they probably should have been billed on the top. You know, they've not met since the Olympics. It had been a long time coming. The speculation leading up to it was incredible. So, you know, I think we're starting now to say, actually, this is equal. And as a result of that, if you're a big name and you're pulling in, then that should be, you know, that should be comparatively paid. So I'm happy to put my voice behind that. I'm happy to put my, you know, my skill set, as it were, and say, no, how do we work together to make sure that actually we get this on the right platform.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. I mean, when you talk about that Tasha Jonas, Katie Taylor fight, how that was not top of the bill. Remember when it came out, and I was thinking, what fight needs to happen for it to be top of the bill on a pay-per-view? Because we're going to start running out of fights, really, because that was a huge fight.
Absolutely, absolutely. And where I think is interesting as well is having watched the Canelo Saunders fight this weekend, and actually obviously Billy Joe Saunders is incredibly hurt, and I think safety in boxing is paramount. So, you know, when you say you've got to go, you've got to go. But where I found it interesting is very, very quickly on Instagram, there were pictures coming up of Ebony Bridges with her eye out here. And so, you know, he's got this, but she carried on going till the end. And I just thought, but where it was interesting for me, it's not injury for injury because you should never compare. But there were a couple of other fighters in MMA that had broken jaws and carried on to the end, etc. They were showing against it. Where I think it's interesting is suddenly, but you know, the likes of the boxing community are comparing the two powers and the two staying powers, and that's when I think you start making the shift into saying we're not playing at this game, we are actually in it. You know, we are genuinely as a gender really, really going to take this world by storm, and I think to bring that collectively together and make our voice louder is just, you know, right. It felt like the right time for me. It felt like it needed a voice, and I don't profess I'm never going to be able to stand in the corner and say you should have thrown a left uppercut or what. No, yeah, you've got to watch your southpaw, your orthodox style. You've gone crazy, etc. But that will never be my skill set. But what I can do is I think I can put on a very good promotional show. You know, lots of experience in event organising, etc. I think I can get the right, you know, the right training around people, the right ethos, the right mentality, the right motivation, and corporate sponsorship, etc. So I think with the likes of the amazing team that are behind, and you know, an incredible team, and obviously owning the boxing app, which enables us to see what the fans want and to start getting that voice through to all of their, you know, all their social platforms. I think I think we're onto a good thing. I'm just dying to get the first show done now. I hate to wish my life away, but roll on that September, October when we can get the first one out there on Sporty Stuff and really show the world what we're about.
Yeah, which is going to be so exciting. And I think there's going to be a huge demand as well for it, because women's boxing is so big over the last 2 years that what you're doing now couldn't have come at a better time, I don't think.
Yeah, I hope so. And we thought about it. It's been a long time in the making. I've spoken to a lot of women. I've been training with a lot of women. You know, I've really put myself out into it because I think it's very naive to say, oh, here's a good idea, let's set it up. So, you know, I've met lots of people. We've been around, as I say, Rich and John, and you know, we've taken advice. And Gareth A. Davies, the Telegraph and Talksport, you know, he was a phenomenal wealth of insight when he came to interview me. And you know, the probing questions are, have you done? And it's right, you know, it's right to have that pressure put on you, because you shouldn't ever offer to represent people if you really haven't put the effort in to do it. So I think, as I say, I'm never going to be a great coach. I certainly couldn't manage anybody, but I think from this side of things moving forward, you know, it's I think we've got a really good team around us to be able to support it and develop it. And as you say, in business, I've worked long enough in business to know there's always a bit of luck, and timing is everything.
Yes. No, it's so exciting, and you just sound like you are the perfect person, because I think it's interesting sometimes where you don't necessarily need like a boxing background to achieve something great in boxing. It's all of these other expertise that are sometimes overlooked, because we always look at the end goal, don't we? So we'll look at Eddie Hearn and what he's done on one night, and we forget about the behind the scenes, the other people that have been a part of that to make the event what it is. And it's not the person who has boxed their whole life and been in 300 fights. It's people who have developed other skill sets and other experiences that can create something so magical, I think, in boxing.
Yeah, completely. And actually, where I think I'm very lucky is I probably ask the most stupid questions, if that makes sense. So I was like, well, how does that work? And how does that work? But actually, what that really did was it gave me the ability to challenge it. Well, why does it work like that? Why can it like this? And I think now we've got the team, and they'll be announced over the next couple of weeks as we really start to sign everybody up. But now we've got the team who are saying, well, I don't know, why couldn't it work like that? And I think for me, it was that great thing. When I was at Royal Mail, I remember we used to get apprentices in, and I'd show them everything, and then I'd say, right, sit down, tell me what's wrong, tell me why, tell me the bit of the process that you looked at and thought, why do they do it like that? Because sometimes you get so stuck in what you're doing. There's that phrase, oh, we've always done it like that. It's just how it works. We can't possibly change it. And I think, you know, for me, there's that moment, isn't there? Well, we're allowed to vote now. I mean, this is, you know, we can change stuff. We can change stuff. I mean, whether we should, well, I shouldn't be allowed to drive, but that's another story. But we've got this. But I think actually, and this isn't, so Unified Promotions is not about, it's not about women because we need our own, you know, et cetera, because I'm completely inclusive when it comes to sport for men and women, you know, and if there comes a time time in unified promotions where actually we need to help the next generation of male boxers come up, absolutely. You know, I'd never say no, we're just women. That's not what this is about. But for me, it's about that platform at the moment where I feel there's a requirement where, you know, I grew up and love or hate Margaret Thatcher, whether you liked her politics or not. I grew up in her era and she was the Iron Lady. So I looked at our Prime Minister and thought, well, I can do whatever I want to do, because she was breaking down barriers, she was changing stuff. And as I say, whether you like what she did or didn't, she was a very forceful woman that I saw every night. You know, my parents insisted I watch the 6 o'clock news, as it was then. So come home, watch the news, have dinner together. And that was the kind of routine. And I remember watching what she was doing and taking on Arthur Scargill and the unions. And, you know, she was just this incredible woman. And in my head, I remember thinking at the time, well, I can do anything I want to do. This is, you know, so I think actually it's providing, Unified is about providing that platform to show that next generation, do it. If you want to do it, absolutely. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to be tenacious and you're going to have to work hard, and you're going to have to roll, you know, put your big girl pants on, as it were, and get out and really, really work hard at it. But I think from not having been in that myself and having done enough research to understand it now, but not having been in it myself, I'm in a very lucky position actually to say, why are we doing it like that? Why don't we do it like that and actually change things up a bit and turn it on its head? And I think for me to be able to come in and potentially disrupt a sport a little bit, I think that's quite exciting.
100%. And it needs it as well. It definitely needs it. And I'm just really, really excited by all of this. More excited now I've spoke to you as well.
Oh, so it's good it's that way rather than I thought it was a good idea, but now I've met you. It's all
No, I'm so excited, and I'm really excited to see the fighters that you're going to get signed up. Really, really excited to see the fight nights from September. So am I right in saying that you've got 8 fight nights booked up from September, haven't you?
Start end of September, beginning of October, and really actually we're down to venues at the moment. We're having the discussions, but obviously because the world suddenly opens up, there's a million parties that are all happening.
Yeah.
It's just about finding the date now and the TV schedule slot. But once we've got that, we'll announce it, and then we'll be about every 4 to 5 weeks for the first 8, which should take us probably to the end of the boxing season, as it you know, as it doesn't have a season, but as it is, and then we'll look to move on and grow it essentially. But I think we'll probably very much look to start it with just women, but I think as the cards go on, you know, we'll add obviously men into there to get the breadth and depth. And so there's a little bit of interest for me with the MMA crossover. I think that boxing MMA world is quite interesting, and I think, you know, having spoken, as I say, to Invicta, we'll start looking at potentially how we can do things just a bit differently, you know, disrupt a little bit rather than just keeping it all the norm and rolling out. We'll have a little look at what we can play around with. But yeah, we've got 8 fight nights guaranteed, which is great because we should see a good volume through there, so start giving it a really good base platform. So yeah, and I'm delighted. I think Sporty Stuff they've been very open, and where I think they've been so good is, as I say, they see this as a real development opportunity. So the fact we're lucky enough to have got a TV channel behind us that wants to invest and put money behind this is great. I'm very excited.
Yeah, because I know for a lot of fighters, especially when they start, it's the small hall shows where no one will really see them unless they're buying a ticket, which obviously not everyone around the country can go and buy a ticket and go to that one show. So I think that's another massive kind of head start for these fighters, because you go from small hall shows to then, you know, they could get signed to Matchroom and be on a massive show, and it's a huge jump. So it's a great start to have like a TV deal straight away.
Yes, yeah, no, very, very lucky. We worked hard to get in. I think we thought it was that moment of actually we needed to almost wrap this up and have that kind of research around it to then say, right, this is what we need. Because I think without it, as great as the concept is, without that Sky TV deal, you can't go out and do, you know, you just can't get the eyeballs on it that you need to really elevate the sport. And for me to get going back to the pay, etc., is all about eyeballs on watching, isn't it? About doing that. So if we can start building social media platforms up, give these girls a real identity that join with Unified Promotions, people are going to want to watch them box, and, you know, and therefore it becomes much greater, and therefore there's eyeballs on it, and therefore they get fairly paid, and the whole thing kind of works in a nice ecosystem commercially. So I think I'm under no disillusion we've got everything covered. We certainly haven't. I still have a wealth of things to learn, but I'm enjoying the journey. So yeah, it's very, very exciting, and I will obviously keep you posted as things develop so that you can share it with your listeners.
Yes, please do, because yeah, keep us updated. Really excited. Like I say, can't wait to see everyone you've signed, and I wish you all the best of luck with it.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you. And I'll keep you posted.
Yes, please do. Thank you so much for your time as well.
Pleasure.